Hello, how are you? My name is Vanessa Ortali. I am the founder of the Ladies Community and Heart and Mind Talks. And I'm so thrilled to chat with you today and with Sarah Centrella. Hello, Sarah. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for our chat today.
Sarah Centrella is truly a manifestation babe. She is a best-selling author and she has traveled around the world talking about how you can be better at manifesting and just connecting better with yourself and the world around you. So I'm excited to dive deeper into your journey and all the tips that you teach your community to live better lives.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, a ride for me as well. And it's what I teach is what I live. And it's been definitely life-changing for me, that's for sure.
So how did you become interested in manifestation and what did that journey look like for you?
Well, it's interesting because it all kind of started with my rock bottom moment, or I call them earthquake moments, when just like the world, or, like the ground underneath you opens up and the world just swallows you whole. That's kind of how I just describe my start to all of this, I guess. And that was when I found out that my ex-husband had been having an affair, and it just ended our marriage in literally 10 minutes.
Wow.
And at the time we had 3 little kids. And so it was,
How did you find out? Was that devastating? Like, what did you feel like in that moment?
yeah, it was incredibly, incredibly devastating. We were high school sweethearts. So
Yeah.
at that point, we had been together exactly half our life. We'd been together for 16 years. We'd been married for
Wow.
8 years. And we had twins that were a year old. So like just walking. And then a 5-year-old. And I was the type of wife, like I just never ever thought about it. And it's crazy now, obviously, but back then, like we didn't have social media, we didn't have anything. So, you know, there wasn't like this alternate universe where people could do a lot of other stuff, and in fact I found out over a text message, and to me that was almost the most shocking part of it, because I didn't even know that he knew how to text. Like this was like back when you had to like change numbers to text. Um it was so devastating on so many levels, not just even the personal piece of it to me. I think what was more critical was that we were going through a total financial crisis, not just ourselves. We had just lost our house, but the country was too. So it was like, this was 2008. It was, the worst possible time. I couldn't get a job. I hadn't been working, we'd lost our house. So it was like all of these factors were really stacked up against me. And I had to not just, not only just figure out like, how do I get up tomorrow because of this personal devastation, but like, how do I take care of my kids, and how do I get a job, and how do I find income and all that stuff. So I think what came from that, based on just pure necessity, which turned into kind of a drive and fire for me, was a realization that my life as I knew it was completely over, just over. Like there was no recreation of it. There was no, everything I'd ever planned my entire life now didn't exist. And so that in a way opened up a brand new like canvas for me. And I think I kind of clung to that idea because anything else would have drowned me like really quickly, So I was like, okay, so what do I want to create? And that's kind of how it started. I never read a self-help book. Like back in the day, Oprah was on, TV every single day. And so she was like my self-help guru. That was about my only exposure that I had to any of the stuff. And I learned about traditional vision boards when she had done those shows back, 2007, 2008. And so when I started recreating my life, I was like, all right, what is it going to look like? What's it going to be? What do I want? And I'm a very visual person. So that's how I started kind of translating it into visuals. And about a year and a half later, it just started all coming to life, and it hasn't stopped.
Wow. So then how did you connect to knowing that what your visuals were?
Well, I think I went about it even on that very first board before I knew anything about anything. Way different than most people ever approach a vision board. And that has turned out to be kind of the secret of my success with this and why it works so well for anyone who's ever given it a try versus like a traditional vision board. And I call them future boards. And I started calling them that way back when, 10 years ago, because I really believe that words have a lot of power. And I didn't want it to be a dream. I didn't want it to be like a vision. I wanted that to be my future life. I was like, this is my future life. This is what I'm working for. This is what I'm building. And so I started from a place of like building out in my head what I wanted. And that was the big difference. Like in my head, I went through like, okay, if I'm a successful woman, what does she look like? You know, like what car does she drive? What kind of mom is she? And I just went through and just created from pure nothing, like from fantasy, what my dream woman would be like if I could become her, you know? And then I went literally on Google Images back in the day at work, like on my lunch break, and printed out colored pictures when no one was watching, um, and put them on my board. And that turns out to be one of the biggest keys of what I teach. So most people just grab a bunch of magazines and cut out anything that they are like, oh, there's a taco. That looks nice. Oh, there's a hammock. That looks nice. Like, the hell are you trying to manifest, man? Like, go get a taco if you want a taco. Like, so I think that was really key. And then I've done, God, I've manifested 8 boards since then. So
Wow.
it's pretty
What
crazy.
is the missing link that so many people aren't connecting? Because there's people across the world that have vision boards, and obviously there's a difference in the future board, but what is that missing link that is preventing them from actually getting what they want?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot in my new book, hashtag future boards. Um, I have a section in there called "What's Blocking You," and I really realized through coaching. I've been coaching for about 7 years now. The methods that I teach, and I really realized that almost as soon as a person starts to dream about their future life, an internal voice comes in that says something, you know, and it's different for everybody, but there are 3 kind of standard blocks, if you will, that come in that try and like push those dreams back down. And one is, I'm not worthy. And that shows up as all kinds of stuff. I mean, it can literally show up as your procrastination habit. Like, why are you procrastinating? You know, so these blocks are tricky. They manifest in various ways in our life. Another huge one is the broke mindset, right? So you have a really hard time dreaming big about things that you can't see a financial direct line to. You know, so if you can't imagine how you're going to pay for that trip to Paris in the next year, you don't want to put a picture of Paris on your board because you're afraid you might be disappointed. That's really standard. A lot of people think that way. And things like that completely block you from ever having those experiences. And so kind of identifying what it is that comes in and tries to sabotage you as soon as you start dreaming big is a big step. And then once you know what that is, you can take action to start removing it. And then the other big piece that I think was not connected, at least for me, you know, when I started seeing things about The Secret and stuff like that, because it was about the same time when I started, was there was no talk about action on any of it, you know. And my first book is called Hustle, Believe, Receive. And it's all about like, you got to put some muscle behind it. You got to be willing to work. You know, if you have a dream to write a book, you can't just like sit on your couch and dream to write a book and expect Simon and Schuster to walk in your living room and say, here's a book, sign your name. You know, like it does not work that way. And that I think was the thing that was most frustrating for me once I did kind of find out what other people were teaching in this space. I was like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense to me. You know, like I don't know a single successful person who sat on their ass and did nothing. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah, and didn't know how to execute.
Yeah, it makes no
Yeah.
sense. Like not even
Yeah.
logical.
Yeah. With the execution piece, are there daily practices that you recommend? Because I know so much of manifestation is truly setting yourself up to believing that you're already there and being and embodying yourself and that life. How do you recommend doing that on a daily basis to stay connected with that future board?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that was kind of one of the pieces that felt really disconnected from me.
Mm.
When I say watch The Secret, I was like, what? You can't just like go down to a Mercedes dealership, smell the new car smell, imagine yourself driving it, and boom, it's in your driveway, like, because everyone does talk about that. You have to live as if, blah, blah, all this stuff. And for me, how I approached all this stuff is I was like, how? Anybody can tell me how I do any of this stuff you're telling me to do? And what I realized is like, no one was telling me how. So that's really what I focus on when it comes to something like visualization. I would say probably 50% of the clients that I work with don't use that skill in daily life. They really don't know how to engage that. Unless you're a natural born dreamer, it is not how your brain is wired, so you have to learn how to do it from the most basic level. And one of the ways that I have people start is old school daydreaming. Like, remember when you were 8 years old and you dreamed about Santa coming? In your mind, you were able to like play that as a little mini movie before it happened. And people can kind of start to wake up and kind of start to realize that. And then I'll ask women who've been married, do you remember visualizing your wedding before it happened? Do you remember describing your wedding to your vendors before it happened? Do you remember like telling them exactly what you wanted? And then when you showed up on that day, it was this crazy thing of like, oh my God, I just walked into something that I've already been living. That right there is manifestation. That right there is how you visualize an outcome that doesn't exist yet and live it in your mind. So when you think about anything that you've ever done in your life that you're proud of, that you succeeded at, every single one of us having already engaged that. And once people understand that, they're like, oh, okay, now I can just rinse and repeat it on other things that I want to accomplish. But we don't kind of make those associations beforehand. So I think a lot of it is so woo-woo and, feels disconnected for a lot of people. But when you strip all that out, it is literally common sense. It's common sense.
Yeah.
It's engaging everything that's ever made you successful at anything you've tried and just pasting it on everything else you want to try.
Yeah, yeah. One concept about manifestation that I'd love to dive deeper into is we see our vision for ourselves based on what we've already seen and what we know. Where is that element where that, how do I describe this? That's this surrender, the fact that there is so much out there than we can even comprehend. And I ask this because so often I see people within their manifestations actually limiting themselves because they say, I want this because that's all that they know. And they're almost using manifestation as a control tactic to control their life and what they want their life to look like. So, how do we expand that to a bigger possibility so that we're open to so much more than we can even comprehend at this moment?
Yeah, I think the first time you do any of this work, like the first time you do a future board, you're going to be really limited. That's just the facts. Like no matter how much I push you, no matter how much, and the book has all the homework in it too, so that the reader can go through the exercises and push themselves and try and, remove the walls of that box. Because I do say, I think every one of us are naturally in a box. It's just the reality of it. We are influenced by TV, we're influenced by the people we know, and we're influenced by our childhood, right? So those kind of three things form our opinion of the life we believe we can achieve. Whether we say that or know that or not, that's just facts. And so to try and wipe that clean and say, I know everything you ever thought about your life, cool, but we're starting from total blank slate. Now what would you want? Everyone just kind of stares at me like, what? And it gets really tough. And so I have this exercise, one of the first exercises in the book, and it's called What If? And those two words really kind of saved me in my rock bottom moment, because in literally the hours after he left, I just kept on like trying to solve that problem. Like, how do I get a job? How do I move? Like, as a lot of us would, that kind of control freak comes in and is like, okay, let's solve for X, and every scenario was like, I can't do this. I really can't do this. Like, there's no way that's going to pan out. And it was kind of like an internal voice or God or whatever anyone wants to call it, that was just like, well, what if you can? And so just those two words in the sense of, wow, that could give you hope, because I think we're always putting them together like, well, what if I fail? What if everyone hates me? What if, so I have this exercise where I want, your listeners can do it too, or I want you to sit down and write like 20 different what ifs. And it just gives you an open blank slate and says, what if I whatever, and you just think of the craziest things. Sometimes I say like, what if you woke up as a Kardashian, then what would you do? Because you just have to shock someone out of their reality and into an alternate universe. And you have to almost go there before you can start dreaming big for your own life. You know what I mean? You have to just let all that go because we have so much baggage around dreaming. And we have, so many limitations that we put on ourselves. And so, if you write out 25 things, like, what if I wrote that book? What if I won that award? What if I ran that marathon? What if I did all these crazy things I've seen on TV that I kind of instantly discarded because I thought, oh, I can't do that. What if I just said, wouldn't that be cool? I'd like to do that. And it changes everything. It really does.
And it takes away that pressure from the how element of how is it going to happen? Because you're just putting yourself in that position. You're like, well, what if it was? What would that feel like? And what would you do?
Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm like, by the time you've made your board, you've really learned so much about yourself. Because the other thing that makes my board so different is that each of them have your 5 core categories on them. So they're representative of your entire future life. So when I sit and look at my board, that's my whole future life. That's my mind and body. That's the people in my life. That's my finances. That's everything. Like that is a map to what's coming. And so if you can look at that and, understand why you're working so hard and what you're, trying to create, that becomes your why. And you're not as focused on the how. There's a lot there that you can work on a daily basis, especially when you come to career stuff or mind and body. That's new practices you put into place, right? That's definitely stuff you could do. But then there's dreams on my board that there is no way in God's green earth I could figure out how, even if I wanted to, even if I had a team. They have to manifest, you know what I mean? And that's the magic of this life. I love that element. I in fact just manifested a trip to Australia and Fiji coming up in May where I'm going to do some workshops. And that came about literally from the most random, unexpected, was not on my radar, out of the blue way, where I'm just like, oh, thanks universe. Thanks for showing me magic, So it's a wonderful way to live.
Yeah. What you're experiencing right now then was on your future board years ago.
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Can you bring us into that journey a little bit? When you're at your job and you just started with your future boards, when did you know that you had something and you wanted to share what you were doing with others?
So when I did my first board, I really thought the only life for me, or the life that I really wanted, was the life of a career chick. That was kind of all I ever knew. The only successful people that I knew had done it in corporate. I felt very lucky that I was starting, in corporate. I was starting as inside sales, so the bottom of the rung, like calling from the closet. But I could see a path to success. I knew if I worked really hard and whatnot. And so I did. I defined what I wanted. I literally told the second job that I got after he left, I told the CEO in my interview, I said, I'm going to be your VP of sales in 2 years. And I wound up being his VP of sales in like 6 months. So literally working my butt off and achieving what I had set out to do. But then I started kind of blogging about it and sharing it, and people were paying attention. They were going, wait a second, I made a vision board when The Secret came out too, and none of my stuff came true. What the hell are you doing? Because I was putting it all out there. I was like, hey, here's my dream. Here's my board. Let's see what happens. And I started as a skeptic. And so from day one, I've been proving all of it, because I was like, I'm not even going to believe this stuff. I don't believe this. No one else will, right? So you can go back through that blog and like literally see it. And I've done side-by-side picture comparisons with timelines for 10 years because I kind of started going like, this is never going to work. This is insane.
Wow.
But the more I started doing it, the more people were like, tell me how, tell me how, tell me how, And I think I kind of came to it kicking and screaming. This was not the career that I thought I would have. And over time through the blog, I mean, thank God for the day and age that we live in right now that gives a voice to the average person. And it did that for me. And it finally got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I can't keep rewriting the same responses to everything. Everyone has kind of these same basic questions. And that turned into the first book of how I did it.
Wow. And that was your hustle, receive, believe.
Hustle, believe,
Or
receive.
hustle, believe, receive.
Yeah, hustle, believe, receive.
Yeah,
and that was really,
yeah.
that was kind of born of necessity. By that time, I think the blog was, at a couple million unique hits.
Wow.
People were reading it like crazy. And I was just literally getting the same questions all day long. And I was trying to answer them. I was like, this is crazy.
Wow.
Like, I'm gonna put a book out. Y'all can go buy it, figure it out yourself,
And I'm sure you see this so often. I know with my clients and my community, we see this too. There are people out there who have a message and who are sharing and who aren't necessarily getting the same feedback from their community. Did you visualize the growth of your community, or what tips would you give them so that they can continue impacting and helping more people?
I didn't initially visualize it at all. To be honest, when I started, I was still trying to kind of create my life, and I was in corporate, like I said. So my blog was unanimous for the first 9 months. I didn't even put my name on it. I was like, oh my God, no one can ever find out, And in the corporate world, most people didn't even know I was divorced or a single mom. Like, that's just how it was. And
Wow.
this was not in the overshare social media, that it is now. People didn't go tell everybody their backstory, So I was terrified. I didn't want, people to realize that I had been struggling financially and all of this stuff. But I had actually written a post that did have my name on it for another site, for The Secret, actually. And it went viral, and it linked to my blog. And I was just at first devastated. I was like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, people can Google this and find it. And I'll never forget, I was like meeting with a client, and I confided in him that this had happened. And he was like, girl, step in and own that. Own every bit of that. He's like, that is, first of all, incredible that like you're surviving and whatever, but you have to own that. And it was the best advice anyone's ever given me. And so from that point on, I did, and it hadn't always been easy. It's not easy, especially I think when you're being real and raw about your own life. From that job, I had probably 4 other corporate jobs, and all of them, it always felt a little, a little awkward. I knew people could go learn everything about my personal life. So, but the thing that I think got it to grow and has grown my audience over time consistently is being authentic to myself. And that would be the best advice I'd have to give anyone, is you have to be real to whatever it is that is real for you. You know what I mean? And I think there's so much, especially in this like Instagram age, so much pressure to have your feed look like everybody else's, like do your pictures like everybody else's, whatever. And the biggest advice I could give to anybody who's out here trying to like build an audience and build a community around it is stop following all the people who are in your space. Stop following them. If you're a podcaster, you shouldn't be following all the top podcasters, because what does that do? It makes you constantly compare yourself to them. There's no time it makes you feel good. Let's just put it that way, right? Like, it always makes you feel like shit. It's always like, oh, I could do it better. They're doing it better. And facts are, either they might have more money to throw behind it, or they've been at it way longer than you. So there's just no good can come from absorbing that all day long. Focus instead on you and what your message is and what you're trying to do. I mean, quite honestly, I follow like 4 people in the self-development space, and that's it. And that's because they're personal friends. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. How has manifesting and the work that you've been doing, how have you connected with you?
How has people connected with me through?
No, how have you actually connected with you through the work that you do? So that, because I think so many people, and what I love to do even within this podcast is help to connect and raise consciousness. And I think there are so many people, even within the community, that they think they're living authentically. And it's actually so much more of a harder question to
Uh-huh.
ask people than
Yeah.
they realize. So, what did your journey look like, and how did you connect with you through this work?
I mean, I think in so many ways it was a blessing that when I started my blog, I was really recovering from rock bottom. I mean, to be honest, I was still kind of at rock bottom. It was probably 6 months maybe after he left. And the only reason why I started is because the first job I was at, one of my coworkers, we would go on sales calls together, and I would just kind of randomly tell him these stories. And he was like, oh my God, girl, like your life, you've got to share this. There's this thing called blogging. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I never read a blog. And he literally came back and he said, we're going to go back to the office. I'm going to set you up on a Blogger account. Tell me what you want to name it. Here's your login. Go write your stories, you know? And so I think I started with zero expectation. And that's huge because I think most people start right now with all expectations. And they think, hey, if I put out 5 or 6 good posts, I'm going to be an overnight sensation. I'm going to have 1 million followers and, you know, my life's going to change. And guys, I've been at this for 10 years. 10 years. I didn't truly start making a living from anything that I do until 5 years ago. And I wasn't at a place where I could do it full time till 3 years ago.
Wow.
So let that be like, and that's the reality. So anybody that you really admire on social media, if you go look at their background, they've probably been at it 10 years too. I mean, they say statistically that that's a fact. It takes 10 years to be an overnight sensation. So, you know, you got to be patient with it, and you got to go in because it is your voice and you have to say it just for you. And that was kind of the other thing that I was very, and have always been very committed to, is saying what I have to say for me, just because I need to get it off my chest almost. You know what I mean? And if it resonated with somebody else, that's a bonus. If it pissed people off, too fucking bad. Like, that's just always how I've been at it. And a lot of people don't like it. I mean, I get feedback all the time. Well, you should be more polished now that I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, that's your expectation of me. That isn't me, you know? And so I think, but the way I can be that way is because I set that as my goal on day one. I'm just Sarah. I'm a chick on a mission trying to prove that anything is possible for anyone. That was my slogan on day one. Literally, when he asked me what I wanted to name my blog, that's what I told him. And so that has grounded me for 10 years.
Yeah.
That, you know, I'm not
that.
doing it for anybody else. The fact that there's an audience there still kind of shocks me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love following your stuff. You're doing a great job. And I love how simple you break it down for people, because they need that. And that missing link that you saw within the secret of that how component, you do so well, which is so great. If people want to start, I know you gave the 20 what if statements, which were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If there was another tool that you could give someone today to start in the manifestation and just connecting more with that principle, what exercise would you give them?
I mean, there's so many. And I'm a huge believer in doing the work. And so both the books, like I said, have all the homework in it. And then I've created expanded journals for them too, because I think most people just don't even know how to do the work. Like you mentioned before, like, how do I find my authentic self? You know, and these are questions that get overlooked all the time in this space, with the assumption is that we know all this stuff and we know how to get there. And so I start by like probing myself, just asking a ton of questions. Like, what would I want? Like, if I could have anything, if someone just walked up to me and handed me a $5 million check and said, this isn't about going and buying mansions and Lambos. This is about, for the rest of your life, you get to live any experience you ever dreamed of with all the people you love. Go crazy. Like, where's the first place you would go? What's the first thing you would do? And most people don't think like that. So that's one of the first exercises that I have in both the books. Actually, I call it a live list. And that one requires 25 as well. Like, I want you to write down like 25 once in a lifetime moments. And that's the key right there. Once in a lifetime. That means that in your current life, you couldn't do any of them. None. You couldn't create a path to how to do any of them. They're all that far-fetched. And it just allows you to, again, expand that bubble that you live in and to start thinking about life as moments, experiences, and memories. Like that's truly what we're on this planet to do and to create. And those are the things that will manifest the fastest. So they seem the most far-fetched and the most crazy, but I promise you, readers, literally, I got another one last night. Readers are manifesting these once in a lifetime moments like months after finishing the book and doing the homework. Like it's crazy, way before you could have ever afforded to buy them. So if we start with that and we just say, hey, universe, I want a life full of amazing once in a lifetime moments, it can start delivering them immediately, way before you have the bank account to have purchased them yourself.
Yeah, that's so fun. I've often heard people within manifestation, and myself included, is you can get everything you've ever wanted without making one additional dollar.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it'll come in ways you just didn't realize. And money is just one form of currency. There's so many other ways and opportunities for things to come to you.
Absolutely. So I always say, if you don't put your dreams out there, you have a 0% chance of living them. Zero.
Yeah.
Like that's not a percentage that I like, you know, I'd rather have a 1% chance. So put it out there, you know, like give the universe a shot, man.
You have nothing to lose.
Right?
Just have fun.
Nothing.
Yeah. I know you also have some other free resources that people can use from your website. Can you tell us a little bit about what they can find when they go to sarahcentrella.com?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm doing an international tour right now, actually. We just added Australia to the ticket, and I'm kind of crisscrossing the nation right now doing a masterclass, a small group masterclass. So these are like 4 or 5 hour coaching sessions with a group of like 20, 30 people. So they're very small group, very intimate. And I'm coaching on all the concepts in the new book, which is future boards. So these are not like vision board parties, none of that. Like this is deep coaching work. And they're intense, they're amazing and transformational. So I have a couple stops coming up. I have one in Florida, and I'm this weekend headed out to Boston, then I have Chicago, Minneapolis. So you can go to the website and check that out. And then I also train life coaches. So, you know, if you're looking for, if any of this message resonated with you and that's been something that's on your mind, this is a really unique way to look at creating the life of your dreams.
It's so fun. Well, I love what you've done in this space and how you're changing the conversation around manifestation and how to actually make this possible for people, because you're changing lives. And I'm so grateful that you shared your story and you continue to do so. So thank you for being you, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on, Vanessa. This was fun.
Awesome. And thank you so much for listening. Go out there, have fun with this concept. Go write your 20 list or your 20 points of what if, and if you had $5 million, what would you do? And just have fun and know that there's so much more out there for you. There's amazing possibilities just waiting for you to get them. So have a wonderful day. Thanks so much. We'll chat with you soon. Bye.